Now, have you ever had one of those moments like you're maybe staring down a deadline or perhaps a personal crisis just hits?
Mm.
And bam, suddenly this crucial piece of advice or some vital truth you knew, you really did know it all along, it just flashes into your mind.
Oh, yeah.
That old saying, maybe something your grandmother told you, and it's suddenly crystal clear, but only when you're really, backed into a corner.
Definitely. It's like our brains file the important stuff away until urgency just yanks it right back out.
It's fascinating, isn't it? That human tendency, letting wisdom just sort of slip away until the stakes get incredibly high.
It really is. It says something deep about us. How we often prioritize the immediate pressure over maybe proactively remembering.
Absolutely. And that very human experience is precisely what we're diving into today.
Okay.
Our deep dive uses this really profound source called Mercy for the Forgetful Heart, and it guides us through an incredibly insightful passage. It's from the ancient text of Psalm 78, specifically verses 32 to 39.
Right. And this material, it helps us unpack some pretty complex ideas, doesn't it? Things like human nature, divine compassion, and this surprising interplay between memory and, forgetfulness.
Exactly. So our mission, let's say, for this deep dive is to pull out those key nuggets of insight. How does our human tendency to forget crucial truths stack up against this idea of an unwavering, profound mercy?
Yeah, we're looking for that shortcut kind of to understanding why, even when people mess up repeatedly, grace still seems to win out. It's a really insightful take on forgiveness and character.
It really is. And it's worth noting, just as we get started, this particular reflection, the source material, it was originally framed for June 22nd, 2025.
Okay.
But like all timeless wisdom, its message isn't really tied to a date. It invites us to consider its truths whenever you happen to be listening, maybe as a new day begins for you.
Makes sense. Timeless stuff.
So let's dive right into the heart of it. The source immediately points to this, frankly, heartbreaking truth in Psalm 78. It says, even after seeing God's power, the people kept sinning. Despite his wonders, they did not believe.
Yeah, and what's truly striking there is the sheer, the mismatch. These people saw extraordinary things, right?
Yeah.
Undeniable acts of power, real miracles.
Mm-hmm.
Yet their response wasn't this sustained belief or, consistent faithfulness.
No.
And the passage, it vividly described the consequence of that unbelief, that sin.
Yeah.
It says, so he made their days vanish like a breath and their years in terror. It highlights a pretty direct and a painful outcome there.
Painful, yeah. And here's where it gets particularly insightful for me anyway. When he killed them, they sought him. They repented and sought God earnestly.
Right.
But what kind of seeking is that, really? It doesn't sound like a genuine, proactive desire for connection, does it?
No, it feels very reactive.
Exactly. Reactive. They only remembered God, remembered that God was their rock, the Most High God, their Redeemer, only when desperation hit them hard.
Mm-hmm. Like someone only saying sorry when they get caught.
Yes. Not because their heart has genuinely changed.
And that's a crucial point the psalm makes almost immediately. It reveals how superficial this kind of remembering was. Verse 36, it just lays it bare. But they flattered him with their mouths. They lied to him with their tongues.
Oof. Flattery and lies.
Yeah. So if you connect that to the bigger picture, it shows that even when they seemed repentant, their hearts weren't genuinely in it. They weren't transformed.
Right.
As verse 37 says, their heart was not steadfast toward him. They were not faithful to his covenant, that sacred promise, that agreement they had.
So it's like performative seeking, a fleeting reaction to crisis, not a real change of heart.
Precisely. Performative is a good word for it.
So we're seeing this really challenging cycle then. Forgetfulness leads to sin, which leads to consequences. And then finally, this desperate, often insincere remembering. It's quite a sobering look at human nature through that specific lens anyway.
It is sobering. But then, and this is where the whole narrative takes this, profoundly hopeful, almost counterintuitive turn. Despite this relentless cycle of forgetting and unfaithfulness, the source tells us, yet he, being compassionate, atoned for their iniquity and did not destroy them. He restrained his anger often and did not stir up all his wrath.
Wow. So even with all that, that track record.
And even then.
Yeah.
And this is where that extraordinary mercy comes in, a grace that kind of defies our normal expectations.
So why the mercy then?
Well, the text tells us why. It's right there in verse 39. It says, he remembered that they were but flesh, a wind that passes and comes not again. That is the pivotal insight. God's forgiveness isn't because he's naive or just overlooks the wrongdoing. No, he atoned for their iniquity. He dealt with the sin, covered it, made away, because he's merciful.
Okay.
And crucially, he holds in his understanding their inherent fragility. He remembers their limits, their, fleeting nature.
He remembered that they were but flesh, a wind that passes and comes not again. That is such a stark image, isn't it?
It really is powerful.
It just strips away any pretense of human strength or lasting power. It reveals our fundamental vulnerability. So, okay, what does this profound insight mean for us? For you listening today?
Well, the source really emphasizes that this divine mercy isn't based on our performance, not on how well we remember or behave.
Right, not on earning it.
Not at all.
Yeah.
It's based entirely on his unwavering character, his nature.
So it's a love that knows our weakness. He understands our limits, but still embraces us.
Exactly that. He gets our human weakness, our limits, and still embraces. And that completely shifts the basis of our relationship with this divine compassion, doesn't it?
It really does.
You can return to this mercy again and again and again. Not because you finally got it right or you deserve it,
no.
but because he actually deeply delights in showing it.
Yeah.
It's not some transaction. It's just who he is.
Okay, so the core message to internalize is we can keep returning to this mercy. Not because we merit it, but because there's this divine delight in giving it.
Yes.
So this deep dive, it kind of challenges us then, doesn't it? To think about what it really means to be a generation that remembers. Not just when we're desperate, not just in a crisis, but daily. Responding with genuine trust and obedience that goes way beyond that superficial flattering with mouths we saw back in the psalm.
Exactly. The invitation is for, maybe, a steadfast heart.
Yeah.
One that remembers not just the hard lessons learned in tough times, but remembers the actual character of this unwavering mercy in every moment.
Remembering who they were, maybe, but more importantly, remembering who he is.
That's a great way to put it, remembering who he is.
So if understanding this deep mercy really transforms how we see our own weaknesses, our own need for grace, here's something to think about. A final thought, maybe.
Right.
If God remembered our inherent fragility, that whole flesh, a wind that passes idea, how might things change if we consistently remembered the fragility of others? Interesting.
Like in our daily interactions, how might remembering their flesh, a wind that passes and comes not again, change how we extend patience?
Or understanding.
Or forgiveness?
Yeah.
What new avenues of empathy might open up if we applied that same profound insight, the one God applies to us, to the human condition all around us, seeing others not just for their mistakes, but for their fundamental, shared, fragile humanity?